Thank you very much for a nice introduction, and good afternoon to all the participants. Let me share my slide first, then I'll start. Is it visible to all?
Yes.
Just all right. Okay, good afternoon to all of you. Uh, we'll be talking about today about some clustering methods. Especially, I'll be focusing on hierarchical and density-based clustering. Let me first give you that what is clustering actually. Clustering is a classic data mining technique that divides groups of abstract objects into classes of similar objects. Okay, so the entire clustering is actually unsupervised learning. Like if you can see that like it is something like that if you have some set of points on say two-dimensional plane, then like on these points if I have to do some clustering, then I say if I consider the distance based clustering, then I can say that okay fine, there is some sort of group of points are like this and like this. So I can say this is my class 1, this is my class 2, this is my class 3. So what is actually involved in this is that with the properties of the data, we apply some sort of algorithm and we try to cluster the data points. That is what. And like normally what we are looking for is that we just try to maximize intercluster point like distance, whereas we try to minimize the intra-cluster data points distance. Okay, that is the goal of the cluster. So formally, it's a unsupervised partitioning of data set D into set of classes. Say n number of classes I may be interested for, in such a way that data are grouped together based on a certain similarity images. Okay, is known as a data cluster. Okay, fine. I think what is required to be done is that you have say data points D. So these say m number of points are there. Then you have class say n number of classes are there. So what is required to be there, that this is a data point, that how to map this data point into some of the classes. Like not some, exactly what we are looking for is that in which class these data points will belong. So that is okay. So that is what we are looking for. Just I think the first lecture you have seen that the Professor Sekhar Verma has talked about some classification and all. So why like what is the difference between classification and clustering? Classification is always referred as supervised learning. The reason is very simple, that data set is having classes, whereas in case of clustering, data set and like class labels are unknown. That means classes are not known to you. So that is what we did. Certainly, classification always talks about that classes are known, data is given, then how this mapping is happening. So the set of rules or say the mapping criteria is actually the task of the classification algorithm. That is you need to find out. Whereas in unsupervised learning, class labels are not known, so you are not restricted with the number of classes. Though in some of the methods we wish to have number of classes to be fixed, but normally in all other clustering algorithms, you are free to have as many of classes could be possible with the consideration of the data. Okay. There are some preliminaries which actually may be required for clustering. There are sort of like data types which is primarily designed for clustering algorithms. Like I'm just going in a quick manner so that we can move to the algorithm part quickly. Uh, you know that there is say a data matrix where actually what we have is object by variable structure you have. So it represents n objects with p variables. Say we can say that each of the columns are actually representing the attributes or measures. So it's a relational table, or you can say n by p matrix you have. This matrix can be actually reduced to what we have is dissimilarity matrix. This dissimilarity matrix is actually object by object structure. So what we have is that you have some DIJ components in the matrix, which is actually the measured difference or dissimilarity between object I and J. So like this distance could be city distance, this distance could be a distance between two documents, this distance could be anything depending upon your domain. Okay, and this is very highly useful for most of the clustering algorithms. So the question is, how do we like go for this dissimilarity, that is DIJ and all? Certainly in first lecture you have seen that there are distance like Euclidean, Manhattan and other distances are there. So those distances are always be useful. Say like if I say that we have a Minkowski distance which actually defined by this formula, where if you put q equals to 1, then it will give you Manhattan or city block distance. If you put q equals to 2, then it will give you the Euclidean distance. There are very much high application for the weighted distance also. Like what we do in weighted distance is that suppose like, because these xi's are actually representing the feature values of the particular object. Say like, suppose if I am looking for some, say, basketball player, data. Okay, you know that in basketball this height is having high importance. Okay, so what I want is that high must have a high you can say importance in the data also, in the clustering also. So what I can do is that I can assign some weight to this particular height, which is higher than other in compared to the other attributes. Like suppose I can prefix like this, that okay, W1 or say W1, W2 or say Wn or P, whatever we can do that. So what if suppose this is, but this actually the feature is actually related with this height part, then I can assign more height, more weight to this particular you can say the feature or attribute, so that the impact of the height will be more in the distance calculations. So in that case, what? Am I audible now? Is that okay? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So I'm just getting messages that I'm not audible. Okay, fine. So, and as you know that in case of distance, there are certain things which is already in place, that it should be non-negative in nature, and obviously diagonal elements should be 0, it should be symmetric, and triangular inequality will exist. So that is what we have. The question is that what type of data we are looking for for the clustering part. So we have data like interval scale variables, we have binary variables, we have nominal, ordinal, and ratio variables, and certainly in somewhere we might be you can say interested to have a mixed types of also. Mixed type means there is a combination of all these above variables could be part of the my variable. Interval scaled, it is actually talks about continuous measurements on say in a linear scale, like you are talking about weight, height, latitude, longitude, temperature, and all. Effect of measurement units in attributes is very important because as I told you that it always, like just now we have discussed that how this weight can be given to a particular attribute which has a higher importance for the clustering part. Similarly, the unit part also, like what units you are using is also important. Like suppose if I'm using, say for height I am using feet, or in some cases I am using centimeter, in some cases I am using inch. So obviously this also matters that which unit you are preferring. So when you go for a smaller unit to be considered, then there will be a larger variable range. Okay, and then certainly if larger unit will be there will be smaller variable range. The reason is very simple. That if I am comparing, say, suppose player 1 and player 2, then certainly if I am going for distance between these two players in terms of feet, it will give you a very marginal difference. Whereas if I'll go for inch, the difference will be a little bit large, and then if I'll go for centimeter, the difference will actually be larger than the other two. So, so this also matters a lot, like to actually visualize the data in terms of distance between two objects, then the unit to be used is also playing a very important role. So be careful whenever you are going for such data to be used. Okay, certainly the standardization will be very important. Background knowledge, that means suppose you are not from the same domain and you are going for you can say data analysis of such data, then you should have the knowledge of the background. That means you must carry some knowledge of the domain as well. Otherwise, if you don't have, then certainly you can have some meeting with the domain holders and you can actually visualize that what is the requirement of the particular domain holder, and then you can proceed for the analysis. Okay. Obviously, when you look for standardizing the data, then we can make use of this mean absolute deviation, and certainly that formula is given there. Then certainly this formula of mean is there. Then when you look for Z score, then the formula is very simple as that Z equals to xi with the difference of xi and mean, and then divided by mean absolute deviation. Certainly the question may be asked that why standard deviation is not used. The simple answer is that the mean absolute deviation is more robust than a standard deviation, because actually in Z score outlier do not become too small, so that is detectable still, because in standard deviations you are just using the square root and all with the square terms, so that actually gives you that particular flexibility. This is what is very important, because normally in data we have large number of binary variables are present. So how to actually make use of those binary variables for creating or for deciding or calculating the distance between two objects. So you can see that what we are trying to so you can see that this A is actually representing 1 1, whereas C represents 0 1, whereas D represents 0 0, and this B represents 1 0. So this you remember, and then if like suppose the variable is symmetric in nature, then your distance will be calculated using this formula, whereas when your variables are asymmetric in nature, then distance will be calculated with this formula, b plus c by a plus b plus c. Then how this a plus b plus a b c d you can actually detect in the data set. Like suppose for example, if I give you this example where actually there is 3 patients are there. So 3 patients, like first is Jack, Mary and Jim. Then these are the attributes. Okay. So there are several tests has been taken, and then fever, cough and all, and we are also capturing the gender part. So what we here we are assuming that gender is a symmetric attribute, whereas the rest are the asymmetric. So I am just assigning let the value y and p be set to 1 and the value of n to be set to 0. So that means you are setting this 1 1 1 0 0 1, then 1 1 0, then 0 0 0, then 0 1 0, then 0 0 0. Now what if you look on the first formula, that what is the distance between Jack and Mary, then these values, like you can see that in the previous slide we have seen that this is b plus c by a plus b plus c, because these attributes are asymmetric in nature. So b plus c means b corresponds to 1 0, whereas c corresponds to 0 1. So you can see that the b part is like, then you are considering this part only. So what are the instances where actually 1 0 is there? So there is no instance of 1 0, so it is 0. As far as C is concerned, 0 1, so there is one instance of 0 1. So this is one instance, so it is 1. Then now what is 1? 1 is 1 1. A is 1 1. So there are 1, there is 2, so there are 2 instances, so it is 2. B is still 0, C is 1. So the distance you are calculating is 0.33. So similarly, you can calculate distance between any object to any object by considering that this binary variable of nature and considering that whether it is asymmetric or symmetric. Okay. So such calculations are required for clustering. Then there are nominal variables where actually it is actually a generalization of the binary variables, where actually you are not strict with the 2 states only, yes or no, or say negative or positive, but it can take multiple state. Like you can see that if I am going for color, then it can take red, yellow, blue, green and all. So there are 2 ways of doing it. That the method one is that you look for number of matches and total number of variables. That will give you the Dij part, whereas in some cases what we do is that individually, like I can assume that red is having no red or yes red, or yellow is having no yellow, yes yellow. So each of these states will be treated as one binary variables, and then you can actually pre-process the entire data, and then you move to the that part. All you can make use of calculation of the Dij, whatever you did in the case of binary variables. So that part we can do it. Ordinal variable, where actually ranks are involved, like there are some sort of data where, like suppose if like most of you are in from teaching, so there is a rank that initially there may be lecturer, then assistant professor, then associate, then professor and all. Each of these designations are having some sort of rank. Okay, so suppose you are dealing with such data where actually ranks are involved. So that means you have to have some sort of importance of these ranks also. So whenever such data is required to be used in the case of clustering, then we make use of ordinal variables. And then what we do is that it is actually whatever we did in case of interval scaled, same way only the XIF will be replaced by the rank, that is RIF, which is actually maybe calculated easily. And then the Z score formula can be modified as like this, and you can actually compute the dissimilarity between the objects. So this is what we have. Then ratio scaled, where actually exponential approximation is involved. Then certainly we make use of logarithmic transformations, where actually I can convert the above things into like YF log of X, and then treat them as continuous ordinal data, and then or say treat their rank as interval scaled, and then you can proceed for the data variables as what we have done in the previous data types, and you can go for clustering to be used in clustering. So this is what we have. So this is what these are the actually not, this is not an exhaustive say sort of data types, but there are more data types which is involved. I think a few may be covered during the different lectures, but these are the important one which can be used. Now, if you look on the types of clustering algorithm, then you can say that higher level, you can see that we have hierarchical methods, then we have partitioning methods, then we have grid based, we have clustering algorithms, which is widely used in machine learning, then algorithms of high dimensional data as well. As for I'll be covering some sort of data methods which actually talks about accumulative and divisive algorithms, whereas I'll be talking about how this k-means can be used for the clustering, and how these k-means can be used for higher, like high amount of data, say large data or big data you can talk about. Then I'll be talking about important algorithms of density based clustering. So that will do. So these are actually categories of the clustering algorithm, and there are subcategories as well. You can see that in case of partitioning, we have k-means, k-medoids, then actually density based comes under also partitioning method, and density based can be treated as some other category, like different category also, because it talks about large data clustering. In case of machine learning, we have artificial neural network evolution methods, whereas high dimensional data, if you look for, then we have subspace clustering, projection, and co-clustering techniques are involved. So there are variety of clustering methods are involved for any type of data analysis. The issues when you look for such analysis, that the first question comes that, like suppose you are given a data D and you are asked to have some sort of analysis on that. That means the domain holder is looking for some pattern out of it. Now the question is that you actually went through and all, and then you found out, okay, I'll be going for clustering. This is again an important issue, because there are some other algorithms, like we have some association mining also, we have some discrimination also, we have some classification, prediction, and clustering. There are so many you can see tools we have in data analysis. The reason, the question is that how to decide that I need a clustering or a classification. Certainly clustering classifications can be decided looking on the data, whether the classes are known or classes are not known. The moment classes are not known, then you can easily decide that, okay, I'll be going for clustering. Now the question is that the moment you land up in clustering domain, then what clustering algorithms you are looking for. So these like this becomes an issue for any data analyst. So obviously, as I told you, that having a background knowledge, having the queries put forward by the domain holders, that what patterns or what type of patterns you are looking for, that may decide that which algorithms you are looking for or you are going for. Okay, so and obviously you have to take care that whether the data size is small or medium or large or maybe big. Depending upon that, your choice of the algorithm will always be very important. Okay, so be careful while going for that, because if in case you choose a wrong algorithm, then actually the entire process will be redone. So always, and what actually data analysts used to do is that instead of going for one algorithm to be executed, we may go for multiple algorithms, say 1, 2 or 3, and then we compare the results, and the optimal will be actually selected for the further analysis. Okay. The distance between clusters can be seen in this way. You can see that what I am saying is that if P and P dash, the P minus P dash is distance between 2 points or 2 objects, then Mi is the mean of the cluster Ci and Ni is the number of objects in the Ci. So similarly, Cj and Mj will be there. So how distance between clusters can be calculated or can be viewed? So there are 4 ways of doing it. First one is minimum distance. So when you look for this, what we do is that that minimum distance of like class I or class J will be considered. Whereas in case of maximum distance, we go for maximum distance of class I and class J. Whereas mean distance, that you calculate the mean of the points of the class Ci or mean of the points of the class Cj, and then you take the difference of that. There is average distance, where actually what you do is that you actually consider all the points distance of Ci and Cj, and then you are taking the average of that, and whatever is coming can be referred as average distance between 2 clusters. So these are 4 ways of calculating the distance between 2 clusters. I'm just going for the first algorithm, which is very basic algorithm and very important algorithm. What we call it as k-means. So it actually works when we know k. That is what we have is k actually talks about the number of clusters. Okay. Then what is the idea involved in this is that what you have to do is that randomly pick k points as the centroid of the cluster k. Of the k clusters. So what we are looking for is that like suppose what you have is that you can see that suppose you have a data point, say D100, there are 100 points. So I can choose anything like D35, D78 or D99. I can choose randomly these 3 points as mean points or centroids for the 3 clusters. So what I'm saying is I'm just fixing k as 3. So the moment I fix k equals to 3, then I need to choose 3 random points, and it is up to you that how far and how close you are choosing it, because only the thing is your choice will impact on the number of iteration, not on the result. Okay, so that is important. So then for each, like what we do is that then depending upon these 3 points, all the points distance will be calculated, and the closure will go in this. Like some of the points will lie in this, some of the points will lie in this, some of the points will lie in this. The beauty of this particular k-means is that all the points will be clustered. Okay, so and the demerit of this k-means is that it cannot handle the noise, because all the points will be mapped to some of the clusters, and hence the problem what comes when you talk about noises in the data, that if suppose your data is having noise, then few or maybe say 1 or 2 clusters may be biased towards the noise, because suppose if I all the points are say all the points are having data between 1 to 200, but there is one point which is actually 250. The moment this point comes, say then what is happening is that within this interval, the clusters are very much fine. But the moment this data points plays a role in this, that what is happening is that one cluster is biased towards this, because always this distance and mean calculation will be biased towards the higher value. So that is the demerit of the k-means. So very simple, that you have say n number of points, choose k number of points as centroid or mean, then map all the points depending upon say closeness or distance to all these clusters, and repeat this part. Like in the next iteration, what we do is that we take the mean of the data points of C1, then C2, then Cn, and then we move forward for redistribution of the points into the clusters. So, and this process will go on until there is no change in the clusters between two consecutive iterations. And if that points you reach, then you can stop. Then whatever clusters you are getting is the final clusters for you. This is very important. This is just an example where actually we have data points, say 7 data points we have. Two attributes are involved, A and B. So what we have is that we have selected the mean vectors like one, say group 1, I'm just going for 1, whereas in group 2 we are going for 4. That means we are fixing k equals to 2 in this case, and we are choosing 1 and 4 as 2 mean. And depending upon 1 and 4, we are just calculating the distances. Then what we found is that in cluster 1, in first iteration, 1, 2, 3 is part of the cluster 1, whereas 4, 5, 6, 7 is the part of cluster 2. Then again you will be going for improved mean, and after calculating that one, we are going for another set of clusters. So and then what we are getting is that cluster 1 is having 1 and 2, whereas cluster 2 is having 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you go for the next iteration, you will be getting the same value or same result. So you can stop, and your final clusters will be cluster 1 as 1, 2, whereas cluster 2 is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is how the k-means works. And it is not necessarily that it can work on only single dimensions. It can go for multiple attributes to be used, and it depends that what distance formula you are using it, and depending on that it will do. It's very simple. Only the thing is it can only work on the numerical data. So this is what this is important, because normally, as I told you, that k-means is not good for large data or big data. So, but since the k-means, the easiness of execution of k-means actually give you some sort of enthusiasm that why not I can go for it by parallelizing this k-means. So this particular architecture is actually talking about how to parallelize the k-means. Certainly, I can make use of MapReduce framework for this. I can make use of HDFS, say Hadoop distributed file system, for storing the data. Say there are some n number of terminals I can use, where actually n number of my mappers will be executed, and similarly there will be n number of reduces. What is the idea is in this is that each of the mappers will execute the k-means of the local data D1, and similarly it will execute for Dn also the same way. The question is that what is your result when you talk about global clusters you are looking for at the end? What is required to be done, that there must be some criteria upon which I can club the cluster, or I can merge the cluster of across these slave terminals, so that I can get the global clusters. So for that, the mean calculation should be uniform. So that is what we are doing it here. So what we are doing is that I am just merging the centroids for all the terminals as global centroids, and then I am sending back to the next iteration for the next iteration. So what we are doing is that once for iteration 1, if I'm going for k equals to 3, so each of these terminals will have different values of mean. That is fine for me, but the moment I come to here, we'll just make a global you can say mean, and then that global mean will be forwarded to all the mappers for the next iteration. So what actually happening out here is that in each iteration, since I'm just updating on merging all the centroids to have a global centroids, and those global centroids are used for the in each of the, so whenever we actually converge to the clusters, then each of these mappers will have same like clusters having same sort of uniform mean. So I can consider same mean of all the mappers will be merged, and you'll get the global cluster out of it. So that is the way of executing the parallel k-means. Okay, all these pros and cons already I have discussed during the k-means. There are some algorithms which is actually done like Clara, and there is another one is Clarence, which is actually the first one. Clara is basically built in statistical analysis packages. So what it does is that it actually, instead of executing the entire algorithm on the entire data, you can actually execute the algorithm on multiple samples of the data set, and then the moment you get the clusters, the rest of the data can be mapped to those existing clusters. So that is what we have. The strength of this particular algorithm is that it can deal larger data set, whereas weakness is that it actually, the efficiency always depend upon the sample size. Okay. Clarence actually used for like clustering algorithm based on randomized search. It actually draws samples of neighbors dynamically, and the clustering process can be presented as searching a graph where every node is a potential solutions. So a set of k-medioids will be there. If the local optimum is found, then Clarence starts with new randomly selected node in search of for a new local optimum. Okay. Yes, it is more efficient and scalable than other partition-based clustering methods. I think this is actually outcome of the research done by NG and Han in '94. You can refer the paper for the details. Next, I'll be moving to what we have is hierarchical clustering. There are two ways of looking on the hierarchical clustering. That is, one is agglomerative nesting, and whereas what we call it as Agnes. Whereas another one is divisive analysis, which is known as DINA. So it looks like what we have is that this particular part is that there are, say, suppose you have 5 points. Okay, and if you look on the lower level, that each of these points are individual clusters. So these are individual clusters. So there are two ways of looking on the clustering part in this case, that I can assume that each of these points are actually a cluster, and then depending upon the similarity, we can merge these points into another set of say higher level of clusters. Say in the first case, this ST is merged, then another case this PQ is merged, the next case this ST is merged to R, so you get it, and at last you will find that these two can be merged this. So when you start with assuming that each of these points are clusters, and you just start merging it, and you actually converge to all the points in a one cluster, then this particular process is known as agglomerative process. Okay, so Agnes you can say. Whereas in another case, we can assume that these points are actually having is in from one cluster itself, and depending upon this like distance between these points, you can actually divide that RST and PQ are actually having distance between them, so it can be divided further, partition, then further it can be partitioned in this way, and then further it can be partitioned this way. So when you when you actually come from top to down, that means assuming that the entire data set is one cluster, and then you are just start making it, partitioning it and all, making it subclusters, then you actually converge to that each of the points are actually forming a individual cluster. So this particular part is known as divisive. This is dyna. So there are two way of doing the clustering in case of hierarchical, that is agglomerative and divisive. Okay. Algorithms like single link, then minimum spanning tree single link, complete link, then average link, these are the hierarchical algorithms. The getting the specified number of clusters or interested clusters, actually during the process we make use of dendrogram. Okay, dendrogram is actually a tree data structure which illustrates hierarchical clustering techniques. Okay, so what we have is that you can see that these are the data points, and what it actually depicts out here is that these A, B are actually joined depending upon that they are close enough, whereas C, D are closed, then further in next level CD is close to E, so it is joined. Then it has been found that the CD is close to AB together, so it is joined, and then F is close to this particular subcluster, so it will be joined, and finally all the points will be here. So what we have is that the hierarchical clustering actually results in a dendrogram, and this dendrogram is very you can say very much easy to from the dendrogram, which is very easy to depict the number of clusters. Like suppose depending upon your requirement, not your requirement, if you are a data analyst, I can say that depending upon the domain holder's requirement, I can actually create clusters, a specified number of clusters. Say suppose if I draw a line out here, so you can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 intersection points. So obviously we have 4 clusters I can get out here. Okay. If I draw a line out here, then you can see that I have 3 intersection points. So I can get 3 clusters, 3 number of clusters out here. Whereas if I draw a line out here, then I can get 2 number of clusters. So depending upon that, how many clusters is your requirement, I can actually draw intersection lines, and I can actually get the number of clusters out of it. So depending upon requirement, you can do that. So let me go through the algorithms. Single link, complete link, and average link actually works on the same data matrix, whereas the criterias of defining that how the 2 columns of the matrix can be merged is actually different. Otherwise rest of the process is same. So as far as single link is concerned, it is potentially long and skinny clusters, but it is fast in execution. What is happening?
Sound.
It is not coming.
Some people.
Okay. I think I'm a bit loud. I think there should not be problem. Okay. Okay, fine. So you can see here that this is one dissimilarity matrix I have, where actually you can see the diagonal elements are 0 and these are the say. What you can see, what you can actually say that these might be 1, 2, 3, 4. I can say that these are cities, and these are the distances between cities. So obviously, if I say this is Allahabad or Prayagraj, if I say, then certainly this will be 0, and then if I say this is Lucknow, then I can say that if this is 200 kilometers, I can say that okay, this is the difference between Allahabad and Lucknow is 2. So similarly, this lower triangular matrix is actually giving you the dissimilarity matrix of the objects 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what we do is actually in this case, first erase this. Okay. So what we are doing in this case is that first of all, always remember that First of all, just find out the minimum distance within this matrix. So what we found is 2 is the minimum distance. So what we do is that the first 2 objects can be merged is 1, 2, because this 2 corresponds to 1 and 2. So I can merge this. So what we did is actually I have merged 1 and 2, depending that it has very both are very close each other. Now the question is, the moment I move to the next matrix, then certainly this 1, 2 will be merged. So obviously what will happen is this 2 column will be merged. So what the criteria of merging these 2 columns is that out of these 2 the minimum will be taken. So this is 3, then this is 9, this is 8. So now we get the matrix, improved matrix out here. Now again the same process, find out the minimum I got, and then we move forward. Then 1, 2, 3 will be merged. Same process, the minimum of 2 columns will be the element of the improved matrix, and then we move forward, and finally you'll get this dendrogram, which will actually give you the representation of the clusters. Okay, this is one single link is there. What we do in complete link is actually giving you tight clusters, a little bit slow. What we do is, the difference is the process is almost same, only the difference is that the moment you go for columns to be merged, instead of selecting the minimum one, this time I'll be going for maximum one. So 3, 6, 6, then 9, 10, 10, then 9, 8, 9. This is what we have. Same way, the minimum, you can see that in the next iteration, in previous case, the minimum lies out here, whereas in this case, the minimum is lying out here. So this change will be there. And similarly, you can go for, then you get the dendrogram, and then it actually represents the number of clusters. Average, again, tight clusters it will give, but bit slow. What we are doing is that I'm not going to select the minimum or maximum in this case, but rather than I'll be doing the average one. So just adding up 6 plus 3 by 2 will give you the average one, and the improved matrix will have entry like this. Otherwise, rest of the process are same. So you'll be getting this particular dendrogram. So it may be the case that in some sort of data, maybe all 3 may be same, but in another set of data, all 3 may be different also. So depending upon the requirement, that how tight or you can say loose clusters you want, you can actually select the algorithms to be used. That is what we do. The problem with dendrogram is that the moment the number of points becomes large, it becomes messy. Okay, you can see that this is one example where actually you cannot actually find out or identify the cluster points. Okay, it is so hedgy, and in sometimes it looks like that, like this. So what we conclude out here is that, okay, fine, this hierarchical where actually dendrograms are used is good for some sort of specified size. It is very difficult to identify the clusters. So for the larger data set, the different set of algorithms is required. Okay. So I'm just moving to the large data clustering, where actually the first algorithm is Birch, which actually talks about tree structure based clustering. Another set of algorithm is DBSCAN and CURE, which is actually density based clustering, which is also very much useful for the larger data set. What we do is that it actually assume a large data structure, which is a memory resident, and clustering may be performed first on a sample of database, then applied to the entire database. Like Birch is one particular algorithm which is actually it is Birch actually. Birch is one algorithm which actually one time reading of the data is sufficient for creating the clusters. So it is highly efficient because it actually works on order of n. Okay. So What improvements you'll be getting using this, you can say Birch. Actually, there is a mistake out here. This is BIR. Okay. We can actually integrate the hierarchical methods with other clustering methods for multi-phase clustering. So like in case of Birch, you can see that as far as clustering of data points below the tree is actually done by k-means and other algorithms. Okay, so actually the whole structure will be provided by Birch, whereas clustering itself still depend upon some basic algorithms. So that sort of you can say integration is done out here, whereas in case of Cure, that it actually selects well scattered points from the cluster and then shrinks them towards the center of the cluster by a specified fraction. Okay, let me talk about Birch first. It is actually balance, iterative, reducing and clustering using hierarchies. It is incremental, hierarchical, and one scan. Incremental in the sense that the moment a new sample comes and it is actually clustered, it becomes the part of the next sort of algorithm, next sort of data samples which comes for clustering. Like what I mean is that the new data sample which is clustered will be part of the data and will be part of the algorithm, and it will actually contribute for the new samples clustering. Okay. Hierarchical because it actually uses tree structure, one scan, that means one time of data reading is sufficient for the clustering purpose. Okay, it actually saves clustering information in a tree. Each entry in the tree contains information about one cluster, and each new nodes inserted in closest entry in tree. We'll talk about this. Like these three are clustering features which is used by Birch. Say n is number of points in cluster, the ls is number of points in the cluster, sum of the points in the clusters, whereas ss is sum of squares of the points in the cluster. Okay, so CF tree, like this is clustering feature tree, we call it. It's a balanced search tree. Node has CF triples for each child. Each node represents clusters and has CF value for each subcluster in it. Okay, so subcluster has maximum diameter. So it looks like this. Okay, you can see that you can fix B and L, which is maximum number of CF in a non-leaf node, and L is maximum number of CF in a leaf node. Okay, so what we have is the entire structure. If you look on, so this is your root, and then it actually this is child, then child, then these are the data points, which is actually the data points. So all the leaf node are actually consisting of data points, and that actually depicts the clusters also. So what we have is that we actually, when you see this particular entire structure, you will find that all the data points are actually kept into the order form. Why order form? Because once I see that this is one cluster for me and this is kept in the leaf node, then obviously the closest one are very sitting very near to each other. So that is what the beauty of that. And for this particular clustering at leaf node is done by k-means itself. Okay. Now the question is that this is CF1, then CF2, then CF6. These are the CFs of the all data points, and then move if you go for the higher level, then there will be CF1 for this, which actually talks about the CF of this particular leaf node. Then you move up, then you will be going to the root, which is CF1. Now the question is, what are the values in this? Like suppose if I say this particular CF1, if you talk about, then this CF1 actually talks about the number of points. If you look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so your n is 7. So some ls will be there and then some ss will be there. So this is your CF which is kept out. Okay. The moment I talk about this CF1, then this CF1 is actually cumulative CF of all these. Okay. Or I can say that it is the CF of his the particular this child. So what is happening is you have CF1, CF2 and CF3. So it is actually CF1, CF2, CF3. This actually will be generating CF1, which is this. Okay. How it will be done? Then certainly in case of CF1, CF2, CF3, the all n will be n1 plus n2 plus n3 will be there. Then ls1 plus ls2 plus ls3 will be there. And then ss1 plus ss2 then ss3. So that will give you the CF1 of this particular node. Similarly, same way it will be generated for this. So this is the way of keeping the information into tree. Okay. Just a minute, let me erase this. This. Okay. So now next is that once you actually done with this structure to be formed, certainly there is a pseudo code for this for which we can use, and you can actually have this particular structure. This is very easy to create it. It is a simple algorithm, simple programming is required for creation of such structures. The question is that the moment I say that some new sample comes, okay, fine. Say some D128 comes. Now the question is, where do this particular D128 will actually fall or will be kept? Question is suppose your answer is this, that this D128 should be the part of this cluster, because this D128 is very close to most of the points of this cluster. Then certainly you have to keep that. What is the procedure is that in this case, certainly there are fixed number of slots are there. What we call it as radius. So the moment I say that your slots, if slots are empty, then you can keep this D128 into that. If slots are full, then what you need to do is that D128 will come in this, and the farthest point will go to the next sibling. Okay, fine. So this readjustment will be carried out. The readjustment will actually result into the changes in the CFIs. So what we do is that the moment this particular point will go, number of points still be the same, but your change of ls and ss will be incorporated. The moment it will go, then there will be a change here, there will be a change here, there will be a change at this place. And since this point is actually going into the next sibling, so there will be change in this also, and similarly there will be change in this also, there will be change in this also. Since these are very simple change, because the calculation are very simple addition is required to be there, so these changes can be actually incorporated very easily. So and hence the D128 will take their place according to the ordering of the item, or depending upon the closeness of the existing data. So that happens, and that and then re-updating all these CFIs will actually the structure will be same. So similarly, what is happening is that as many new samples comes, those samples can be feed into the structure. Certainly, the moment if you require more levels to be created, that can be done also. So as many data points you want, you can actually accommodate in this. That is what we do it. So that is fine. So the effectiveness is that it finds a good clustering with a single scan and improves the quality with a few additional scans. It's a one scan process. Trees can be rebuilt easily. Complexity is very much order of n only. Weakness is that it handles only numeric data, whereas it is sensitive to the order of the data. Okay. Next is cure. Now, clustering using representatives. This is very simple, that you can see that what is happening. The first A sample of the data is there. That means you have actually taken one sample out of the data D, and then you start looking for cluster median. So suppose you have 3 clusters with representative points. These black points are actually representative points I'm looking for. So these are the representative points. These are representative points, and these are. So depends upon that how, like as I told you that marginal, you can say uh, data distance, we merge the clusters. So you can see that since these 2 points are very close enough, and if it is within the threshold what we have fixed for the cluster distance, say intra cluster data distance, then these 2 can be merged and this becomes your 1 cluster out of 2 clusters. So similarly, if data points like the distance between these or distance between these are very much within the threshold values, then it can be merged as well. Okay, so what we have is that this, and you can see that the moreover you will find that this data centers may actually shrink as well. Shrinking means that it may actually converge to the center part of the data. So that is also the part of the like this. What is happening? This is one example is that you can see that red points are actually the repetitive points. Then the moment when you look for that, what you do is that actually you are shrinking the data representative points with some fraction of alpha. Then you will find that it will actually converge to the center part of the data points, and that will actually give you the clear picture of the cluster. So as far as algorithm, it is very simple, that you just go for a sample of the data, then partition the sample into p partitions, then partially cluster the points into each partition, remove outliers based on size of clusters if you wish to have it. If not, then you can go for without removing also if you think that there is no outliers, if it is clean data. Certainly completely clusters of all data in the sample. So based on the using the representatives, you can actually call all the data points of the database and you can map the data points to the clusters. So that is very easy to do that. Effectiveness is very much like, since it is also order of n, just one scan of the data points will be sufficient to handle the clustering part. So this is what we have. Obviously sensitive to the user defined parameters, sample size, desired clusters, and ranking factors. These 3 are actually user defined, so you have to be very careful regarding that. Okay. Next is density based clustering methods. This is actually algorithms like dbScan, optics, densclu, click. These are actually the outcome of the research. You can see that all these are actually published in form of a conference and journal papers. Like dbScan was done in '96, though there are many variations were proposed, and still many variations exist for dbScan also. Then we have optics, which is in '99, then densclu, which is in '98, click, which is also in '98. And you can see that these are proposed in very prestigious conferences like KDD and SIGMOD. So these papers are very significant and are widely used for the clustering purposes. Okay. dbScan is actually density based spatial clustering of applications with noise. It actually clusters the data points. Like you can say that clusters are dense regions of objects separated by regions of low density. So this is noise. Outliers will not affect in the creation of the clusters. There are 2 user defined parameters will be there. That is minimum points, that is minimum number of points for any clusters, and epsilon, which is each point in cluster there must be another point in it less than this distance away. So there are some formal definition required for this particular method. The first one is a distance measure is defined on DB, and the distance between any PQ, which is actually the part of the data, is denoted by distance PQ. Okay, this is first definition. Then the next definition is that epsilon neighborhood of P denoted by epsilon MBHD of P is a subset of data points such that distance of PQ is epsilon for any Q, which is actually epsilon neighborhood of P. So that can be seen what we have is like this. You can see that epsilon neighborhood means this is P and say this is Q, then this is actually within the epsilon neighborhood of P. Okay, because this is epsilon and we are fixing as minimum points 4. So say if within the epsilon, if all four, more than 4 points are existing, then for that this particular point, if I say that Q is there or P is there, will becomes your core points, or you can say the first level of clusters you are making. Okay, so this is an epsilon neighborhood, this is core point. Density reachable is something that, okay, fine, with epsilon neighborhood this point is reachable to this, with epsilon neighborhood this point is reachable to this, then certainly the virtue of you can say what you can see is that you can make use of transitivity. The Q is reachable to R, so this is known as density reachable. Okay, so the other definitions, that if epsilon neighborhood of P is having number of points within this is having more than or equal to minimum points, then P is called a core point, or P can be referred as first level of clusters. Given PQ belongs to DB, if Q is belonging to epsilon neighborhood of P and P is a core point, then we say that Q is directly density reachable from P. That is what we have. Then given PQ, Q is density reachable from P if there is a sequence of points, say P1, P2, Pn, such that P is P1 and Q is Pn, then each Pi plus 1 is directly density reachable from Pi. That is what we, there is another set of definitions. Then P cube belongs to data points P and Q are density connected if there is a point R such that both P and Q are density reachable from R. So that these are the definitions which will be used. From this figure you can see that what is happening out here is these are actually, you can say that this is B1 and this is B2. By definitions you can say that this is P, this is Q, this is Q, or you can say that this is P1 and this is Pn, I can say. And then what is happening here, that with the virtue of this epsilon neighborhood, this is close to this, then this close to this two, then this. So all these epsilon neighborhood points are actually a core point, and then it actually enhancing their area. So the moment if I talk about what will be the resultant clusters, then resultant clusters will be like this. All these data points which is coming with this. So this all will actually generate your one clusters. The rest of the points again will be the, like randomly you have to choose another point, and then we'll be going for the same set of process for getting the another set of clusters. The beauty of this particular clustering algorithm is that you are getting clusters in a very arbitrary shape. It is not like circular or something like that. So it actually gives you, it actually capture the you can say that the closeness of the data even if into arbitrary shape as well. Okay. So simple algorithm, that arbitrary select a point P, retrieve all points density reachable from P with respect to epsilon and minimum points. If P is a core point, a cluster is formed. If P is a border point, no points are density reachable from P, and DBs can reach the next point of the database. Continue this process until all the points have been processed. And normally DBs can carry is order of n square, whereas if you use a sparsal index, it will be order of n log n. It is sensitive to user defined parameters. I think I'm running out of time. So I'll be just giving you some idea that how this map reduced DB scan can be used. What we have is that how to parallelize. Hello? Hello? Uh, Indrajit, how much time is left? Is it over for me? Hello? Hello? Uh, okay, fine. So I'm not getting any response. So I'm just believing that I can go for 5 minutes more. So what we have is as I told you that we can parallelize the DB scan also. So what we are doing in this case is, say like if you have D, then you can actually D1, D2 or D and N number of partitions you can do, and each of these mappers will be responsible for executing the DB scan part. So certainly what we have is that certain set of clusters you will be getting, say for mapper 1 and 2 and 3. The question is how can we get a global clusters out of it? So this is what are the criteria that I can merge this and this, or I cannot merge this and this too as well. So merging is required because there are 3, 2, 4, say it means 5 plus 4 and 9 clusters are there, and then for getting the global clusters, that merging criteria could be defined. So merging criteria can be seen in this way. What we are doing is that I can take one cluster of this, say this is my one cluster, and so one cluster of the mapper 2, this is another cluster. So I have taken the 2 clusters out of it. Now what I do is that I'm just defining the inner region and outer region of this with the epsilon distance. So IR is inner region, OR is outer region of this S1 and S2. So I'm getting this. Now what I'm doing is I'm just picking a point PX, which is actually my, yeah.
Sir, you may also conclude so that we may take some questions from the participants.
Okay, fine. I'm just concluding it in 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. So what is happening is the merging criteria will depend upon this, and what we'll do is that I'll just select a point Px, which is actually lying into the inner region of S1 and S2, either of these two, and then I'll be going for epsilon distance, and then I'll be going for with the radius of epsilon distance, I'll be going for a circle, and then we try to investigate that what are the points lying in between. Suppose there is one point which is lying in this, there are 2 points which is this, and if the condition is like that, if some of the points are from S1 lying in this particular circle, and there are some points which is from S2 is lying in this, then by the virtue of directly density reachability of the DB scan, these all points of S1 and S2 are directly density reachable. So that means this 2 can be merged and becomes a single cluster. So in that case, these 2 can be merged and I can go for this. The complexity of this is that each of these clusters of each of the mappers will be investigated with each of the other mappers clusters for this particular merging process, whether it can be merged or not merged. Finally, when you process this all combinations of investigation, then finally you'll be having this global clusters, which will be your final clusters for the process. Okay, so this way I can parallelize the DB scan also. Okay, since I'm just running out of time, there is another algorithm which is known as Bradley fired BFR, which is actually a variant of k-means, and the beauty of this algorithm is that it can be used for large amount of data, or say big data also. It actually works on discard set, compression set, and return set, You can go through it. This is also a one form of, you can say, have a research paper is there. And this is very important also, and this is widely used these days. Okay, so I'm just concluding here. This was always questions will be there, that how do we decide if a point is close enough to a cluster that we will add the data points to that clusters. And obviously compression set is related to BFR, so I'm just leaving it. I have used one figure which is from this paper, that is MapReduce DVScan. Rest, I must acknowledge all the authors and website whose content was part of my lecture. So I think I'll conclude here. If any questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any question, please you may unmute yourself and you may ask.
Yes, sir. I have one question. So primarily, before we do classification, is it necessary to do clustering and the algorithms which you mentioned? How is it practically used? Like I know it's used in marketing and like segregating the segments, but what else can be used, like from a clustering perspective? How can it be used in business?
Your question is that I think you have started with that. Can we use classification first, then go for clustering? That was the question initially, and then how it can be used practically. This is what we are looking for.
Yeah, the first question was that before we do classification, do we need clustering to be done? That's the first question.
No. There is nothing like so. As I told you that both classification and classification is a supervised learning, whereas clustering is unsupervised learning. If your class labels are present in the data, then there is straightway you have a choice that you can go for classification. Whereas if class labels are not known, that means you don't know that what number of classes or what sort of features of the class are in the data. Then clustering is the obvious choice. You can go for it. Certainly, you can integrate both the things. Like you can go for combination of both. That I can do clustering first, and I can apply some sort of classification algorithm to define the cluster classes. That can be done, but not necessarily that before clustering or before classification, the vice versa can be used. So that is one part. Second part is how practically can be used. Yes, all these algorithms which I have just mentioned, it is highly practically used, like in even whatever domains you are looking for. I think I have attended few conferences where I have witnessed that these algorithms were used not only in IT or computer science area, but these have been used in bioinformatics, have been used in even electronics, and certainly deep learning, if you look, is nowadays used in almost all the domains. So practicality, what you are looking for, like certainly practicality means you'll be getting data from a practical domain, and then whatever pre-processing and other things, cleaning is required, and you can apply these algorithms. Certainly, there are in some cases these algorithms will be directly used, whereas in some cases these algorithms need to be altered for using it. Okay, hope this actually answers your question. Any more question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
So let's open.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we may close this session. Yes.
Thank you, sir, for your precious time for delivering this talk on clustering algorithms. With this, we now come to the end of this second talk. Now we are going to have a short break, and we will again rejoin at 3:30 sharp. When they
So-
will be rejoining, we will be having a hands-on session by Dr. Munindra Ojha from IIIT Naya Raipur. So we are now taking a short break.
So in that next session, Google Colab will be introduced for you, where you can do the hands-on with scikit-learn and other PyTorch. So you all must join. It will be starting that. It will be for the hands-on point of view, where you can play with the different algorithms. So it will be the first hands-on session, especially for this, where so many algorithms you can play. Okay, till then, just enjoy. We will meet at 3:30 sharp for that session. Thank you.